BeTheTalk, episode 198, featuring Natasha Sharma. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Natasha Sharma. Natasha, are you ready to talk?
I am ready. Let's do this.
Dr. Natasha Sharma is a leading authority in the world of emotional health. She is a therapist, clinic owner, television media personality, and the author of The Kindness Journal. A sought-after international expert, she is also a co-founder of an emotional fitness e-learning platform launching this summer, Rule Your Emotions. Natasha Sharma, it's good to have you on the talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your talk is called Why What We Feel Matters More Than What We Think. It's all about emotional intelligence. Please take us behind the talk.
Well, so the talk really stresses how we place as a society so much value on our physical health. And, we've been this way for a very long time, and we continuously make improvements and place a lot of focus and attention on how to best maintain our physical body without paying quite as much attention to the mental and emotional body. But if you really think about it, most people, when they picture themselves in their older age where things naturally start to decline, they actually value their mental fitness over their physical fitness. That's what people will say. But yet we don't put the actual same effort behind it. So my talk is about sort of raising awareness around that, and also how it's actually incredibly important to place as much, if maybe not even more, emphasis on your emotional health.
For sure. And you've mentioned in the talk that you've given over 500 emotional assessments to people. You really boil it down, and the neat notes that I have in front of me right now that I took from your talk is that we really, there are all kinds of nuances to our emotions and everything else. And it's very important to have emotional health and emotional intelligence to know what we're feeling inside, be able to read what other people might be expressing. But it can be boiled down to three primary emotions: love, hate, and fear. And everything else kind of springs out of a mixture. It's almost like a Venn diagram of those three emotions. Are those kind of the conclusive conclusions from your assessments? Are there some other things that are in there that are relevant to share?
Well, the three emotions don't really stem from my assessment so much as my clinical experience, that those tend to be some of the strongest drivers of our behavior. My assessments really center around the fact that we place a lot of value on conventional intelligence, like cognitive things, cognitive functioning, and IQ. But actual studies reflect, and life reflects, that it's the other kinds of skills that are far more predictive of happiness and success. And those kinds of things are less quantifiable, but they include things like being able to persist in failure, being able to interpret your failure in a way that is healthy and conducive to continuing to explore and try and move forward in your life and set new goals and continue in your pursuit of those goals. So being able to switch your attention and focus, being able to focus for periods of time, longer periods and shorter periods, being able to be socially adaptable. These are actually skills that can be more valuable in the long term and contribute far more extensively to our happiness. So that's kind of where what I was talking about with respect to the assessments, Nathan.
Natasha, this is really becoming the theme of the day, emotional intelligence, because I've already in the interviews that I've conducted today, one in particular, with a job hunting expert, Sarah Baker Andrus, from earlier this morning. It's really any kind of work, any kind of relationship, any kind of partnership where you're accomplishing anything. It depends entirely on emotional intelligence and whatever, basic skills that you're bringing to the table. Really, emotional intelligence really seems to be the glue that allows us to be able to work together with other people for any length of time. So it's really been fascinating to think through just that part of our lives of finding meaningful work, gainful employment, or, being a consultant or an entrepreneur and being able to partner with clients for any length of time in exchange for money and in exchange for gainful employment, and the role that emotions and emotional awareness and intelligence really has in that sector of our life. What are your thoughts about that, Natasha?
Well, I agree. I think it's important to define what exactly that means, what emotional intelligence is. It is something that we can learn. That's my first point. But it really comes down to understanding that we live our lives emotionally. We don't live them cognitively. And what I mean by that is how we the value that we place on our life, and the quality of the life is determined by how you feel. And so emotional intelligence basically stems from understanding that, but being able to manage and optimize your emotional experience. Most people search for meaning in the world, and this is a bit cliche, but they're looking for meaning, they're looking for purpose. Well, that's mental, that's cognitive. Your life isn't, at the end of it, when you're standing on your last days, you're not going to think back and remember how you thought about something, or the way you mentalized something, or what somebody said to you, or what you thought when you were in their presence. You're going to remember how you felt. And an example of that is, if you asked me if I asked you rather, what's the meaning of a sunset? Well, it's a mental answer. But if I ask you to experience a sunset, that can last with you a lifetime. So in this world, particularly now more than ever, we chase after and we define our lives a lot of the time by the tick marks, the accomplishments, the degrees we've earned, or the companies we've started and succeeded, or the promotions we've got, or the size of the house, the marriage, the number of kids, the cars. None of that will matter if you don't feel good in your life. You could be the most successful. I mean, we've had examples in the news. You can think of just recently, Kate Spade is the one that comes to the top of my mind. Incredibly accomplished, incredibly well respected in her field. But if you don't feel good, if your inner world, if your inner mood isn't what you want it to be, none of that will matter. So whether you're at that level that she reached, or whether you are simply a student in school, or whether you drive a bus and make $40,000 a year, it doesn't matter. If you feel good about yourself, if you feel good about your life, if your mood is managed, your quality of life will be higher than those who don't manage their mood. Essentially, that is what the crux of emotional intelligence is. It is about being able to manage and be in control of your emotional experience. It's not about accomplishing these tangible things. It's about feeling good. It's about feeling well and peaceful. That doesn't mean you'll feel happy and joyful 100% of the time. That's not what emotional intelligence is. What emotional intelligence is having an appropriate emotional response to your immediate environment as best as you possibly can. That's how I define it. And basically being able to live a life where you feel peaceful and content much of the time.
We've been enjoying this conversation with Dr. Natasha Sharma. Her talk is called Why What We Feel Matters More Than What We Think. You've got to check it out. And we're going to be pivoting over to you, Talk Universe, in just a moment for the Blitz round. People ask, how could I start a 7-day-a-week podcast? It's because of what I've learned from my mentors. Some of the best mentors in history aren't around anymore. They've left hours of one-on-one mentoring behind in their books. Each month at Classics on Tap, I record a new chapter from a classic business book to help you make a difference. Download your first chapter at classicsontap.com. And we're back with Dr. Natasha Sharma. It is time for the Blitz round. This is when I am going to ask Natasha a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Natasha, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First question, were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I was selected.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
All three.
How did that work for you?
It worked well. I would say less memorization, more storytelling. My style is to tell a story, and I definitely recommend that people weave a story if they're going to give a TED Talk.
For sure. So you walk out on stage. Did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither or both?
Absolutely had nerves. And I'm a professional speaker and a public persona at that. And I was speaking to 1,000 teenagers and adults, and I was incredibly nervous. And there was a point where I had a blank, which only apparently I could tell. But yes, even very experienced people get nervous. Expect to get nervous. It's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay. My question to you, which is kind of a unique question, you're about to give a talk on emotional intelligence. So you walk out on there, it's scary, you're getting hit with all of this stuff, and yet you've got to, be true to your own definition of emotional intelligence. You've got to have an appropriate response for the moment, for your situation, if I was listening correctly. How did you manage all of that stuff in the moment and still give a great talk?
Well, I was experienced. It did help, but honestly, I just be kind with yourself. Even if you flub up, it's okay. The best of the best of the best flub up in public, and it's okay. It makes you human. In this day and age, it authenticizes you to your audience. So I say, roll with it, pat yourself on the back, and just keep going. Plow forward.
Aside from what you just told us, Natasha, what's a tip, technique, or a tool that helped you?
I would say give the talk you need to give. Don't give the talk you think other people would like to hear. Give the one that comes from inside you, the one that you personally feel is the message that you need to send to the world. That is probably the best tip that I could give. Here's
the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Probably I would have gone into a little bit more detail of my backstory. I saved it to the end of my talk, and I know that in the aftermath, it was really popular with people. So I would have liked to sort of expand upon that.
What would you say was the biggest challenge of the entire talk for you?
Definitely keeping it to the sort of 12 to 18 minute mark, because TED Talks and TEDx are always 18 to maybe 20 minutes max. So, you got to make it a lot of bang for your buck. So it's actually more difficult to make something shorter than it is to make it longer. So that was challenging.
Natasha, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
During it was like right in the opening. I completely blanked. I had that sort of quintessential brain fart, if you will. And as I looked at it, and it was filmed, professional, it was a very high pressure setup, I think, which contributed to said brain fart. And, in the end, only I could notice it. Nobody noticed it. And I had family and friends in the audience. So I think, that was unusual for me and quite funny. But I think sometimes we see these things more, magnified more than other people do.
We've been enjoying this conversation with Dr. Natasha Sharma. Her talk has been called Why What We Feel Matters More Than What We Think. It's all about emotional intelligence. We want you to check out that talk, and you can do that. You can type that into YouTube the old-fashioned way, or you can go to our show notes page over at BeTheTalk.com, as well as we want you to connect with Natasha Sharma at NatashaSharma.com. And in just a moment, we're going to be back with Dr. Natasha Sharma for the final word of advice. Everyone wants to change the world, but not everyone knows the first step. Before you can change the world with your talk, it has to be selected. So grab the templates, timelines, and tools that I use to get my talk selected at BeTheTalk.com. And we're back with Dr. Natasha Sharma. It's time for the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
My final word of advice?
Your final word of advice.
I'm like waiting for you to ask me. Okay, my final word of advice to listeners would be to realize that in this world, you are going to make mistakes, and sometimes royally. And just remember that if you are not making mistakes, you are not growing and you are not learning. So please learn. If you haven't done this already, learn to reframe your mistakes, your flubs, your screw ups, your mess ups, and learn from them. Like, don't keep repeating them. Make amends if you have to, but please don't be so hard on yourself and think that you need to be perfect, because nobody in this world is.
I love that. Dr. Natasha Sharma, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe. Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.